Imagine a man so wealthy that his act of charity crashed an entire economy. A king so rich that when he passed through Egypt, gold, the most precious metal on earth, became worthless overnight. A ruler whose generosity caused inflation so severe that it took 12 years for the region to recover. This isn't a myth. This isn't an exaggeration. This is documented history. The year was 1324. The place, Cairo, Egypt, one of the wealthiest cities in the medieval world, a crossroads of trade between Africa, Asia, and Europe. A city that had seen emperors, sultans, and merchants from every corner of the known world. But they had never seen anything like this. A caravan appeared on the horizon. Not dozens of people, not hundreds, 60,000 people, an entire city on the move. Camels stretching as far as the eye could see, each one laden with gold, servants dressed in Persian silk, soldiers in gleaming armor, and at the center of it all, a man on horseback, wearing robes that shimmered with gold thread. His name was Mansa Musa, Emperor of Mali, Lord of the Mines of Wangara, Commander of the Faithful in West Africa. And according to every economic historian who has studied his reign, the richest human being who has ever lived. Not the richest of his time, the richest ever. Richer than Rockefeller, richer than Bezos, richer than entire nations. When he entered Cairo, he brought so much gold, gave away so much gold, that the price of the metal collapsed. The Egyptian economy went into freefall. Merchants panicked. The currency became worthless, and it would take over a decade for Egypt to stabilize. All because one man decided to go on pilgrimage. This is the story of Mansa Musa's legendary journey to Mecca. A journey that changed the course of history. A journey that revealed to the world the unimaginable wealth of Africa. A journey that proved the Mali Empire was not just powerful. It was the richest civilization on the planet. And the reason you've barely heard of him, because for centuries, this story was deliberately erased. Until now, to understand Mansa Musa's pilgrimage, you first need to understand the empire he ruled. The Mali Empire. In the early 14th century, it was one of the largest and most powerful states on earth, stretching across West Africa, from the Atlantic coast to the edge of the Sahara Desert. Mali controlled an area larger than Western Europe. But size wasn't what made Mali extraordinary. It was what lay beneath the ground. Gold. More gold than anywhere else in the medieval world. The mines of Bambouk, the mines of Bure, the legendary mines of Wangara, whose exact location was a closely guarded secret. These mines produced more gold than all of Europe combined, and Mansa Musa controlled them all. Gold from Mali flowed north across the Sahara to the Mediterranean. It filled the treasuries of Morocco, Egypt, and the Arab world. European kingdoms minted their coins with gold that came from Mali. The entire medieval economy ran on African gold, Mali's gold. But the world didn't know where it came from. European maps from the 1300s showed a vague region in Africa, labeled Land of Gold, with a drawing of a black king holding a golden nugget. They knew the gold existed, they just didn't know the scale. Mansa Musa was about to show them. He came to power in 1312, after his predecessor, Abu Bakr II, embarked on a strange and doomed expedition. Abu Bakr believed the Atlantic Ocean had another shore, a land beyond the western horizon. So he assembled a fleet of ships, loaded them with provisions, and sailed west. He was never seen again. Some historians believe he may have reached the Americas, 170 years before Columbus. Others think his fleet was lost to storms. We'll never know. What we do know is that Mansa Musa inherited the throne, and he inherited an empire at the height of its power. Mali wasn't just wealthy, it was sophisticated. The city of Timbuktu was a center of Islamic scholarship, with universities that attracted students from across the Muslim world. Jannah was an architectural marvel, its great mosque built entirely of mud brick in a style so advanced that it still stands today. Mali had a professional army, a functioning legal system based on Islamic law, trade routes that connected sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean and the Middle East. It was a cosmopolitan, literate, organized state, not the primitive Africa that Europeans would later invent to justify colonization. And Mansa Musa, devout Muslim and emperor of this golden empire, had a dream. He would make the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim is required to make at least once in their lifetime, if they are able. But Mansa Musa wasn't going to make an ordinary pilgrimage. He was going to make a statement, a declaration to the Islamic world and to history itself, that Mali was not some distant, unknown kingdom. It was a superpower, and its emperor was the wealthiest man alive. He began preparations, and what he was planning was unlike anything the world had ever seen. The year was 1324. Mansa Musa had made his decision. He would journey to Mecca, over 4,000 miles away, crossing deserts, kingdoms, and seas. But he would not travel alone. He assembled a caravan that defied comprehension. According to contemporary Arab historians who witnessed it, these aren't legends, these are documented eyewitness accounts. Mansa Musa's caravan consisted of 60,000 people. 60,000. To put that in perspective, that's larger than most medieval armies. It was an entire city on the move. There were soldiers, 12,000 of them, to protect the caravan from bandits and raiders. There were servants, advisors, officials, scholars, and griots, the oral historians who preserved Mali's history through song and story. There were horses adorned with gold, camels, hundreds of them, each carrying 300 pounds of gold. And there were 500 slaves, each carrying a golden staff weighing 6 pounds. Do the math. That's 3 tons of gold just in the staffs carried by slaves. And that was just for show. The total amount of gold Mansa Musa brought. Historians estimate somewhere between 12 and 18 tons of pure gold. At today's prices, that would be worth over $1 billion. But in the 14th century, when gold was even more valuable relative to other goods, the purchasing power was unimaginable. This wasn't just wealth. This was a statement. The caravan departed from Niani, the capital of Mali, sometime in 1324. The exact date is lost to history, but what we know is that the journey would take over a year. And every city they passed through would never forget it. The first leg of the journey took them north, across the Sahara Desert. The Sahara, one of the most inhospitable places on earth, endless dunes, scorching days, freezing nights, no water for hundreds of miles. But Mansa Musa's caravan was prepared. They traveled along established trade routes, stopping at oasis towns where Mali's merchants had been doing business for centuries. They carried enough supplies to sustain 60,000 people, and they moved slowly, deliberately, like a golden tide rolling across the sand. The first major stop was Walata, a trading city on the edge of the Sahara, in what is now Mauritania. Here, Mansa Musa rested his caravan and resupplied. The local merchants were stunned by the scale of the procession. Word began to spread across North Africa. The Emperor of Mali was coming, and he was bringing a fortune. From Walata, the caravan continued north through the Sahara, crossing into what is now Algeria. They stopped at Tuat, another desert trading hub, and here, as he would do at every stop, Mansa Musa gave gifts, gold, lots of gold, to local officials, to scholars, to mosques, to anyone who showed him hospitality. This was part of Islamic tradition, generosity to fellow Muslims, especially during the Hajj. But Mansa Musa's generosity wasn't normal. It was excessive, extravagant, overwhelming. He wasn't just being charitable. He was making sure the world knew who he was. From Algeria, the caravan turned east, toward Egypt, toward Cairo, the jewel of the Islamic world, the political and economic center of the Mamluk Sultanate, one of the most powerful Muslim states of the medieval era. Cairo had seen wealth before: sultans, caliphs, merchants who controlled trade routes to India and China. The city was cosmopolitan, sophisticated, jaded, but they had never seen anything like Mansa Musa. In July 1324, Mansa Musa's caravan arrived at the outskirts of Cairo. The Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, al-Nasir Muhammad, had been informed of the emperor's approach. This was unusual. Foreign kings didn't just show up in Cairo with 60,000 people. Protocol had to be observed. Diplomatic formalities had to be followed. The Sultan sent an emissary to greet Mansa Musa and invite him to the palace. But there was a problem. According to Islamic and royal protocol, Mansa Musa was expected to bow and kiss the ground before the Sultan. This was standard practice for visiting dignitaries. It was a sign of respect, a recognition of the Sultan's authority. Mansa Musa refused. He was an emperor, a divinely appointed ruler of one of the largest empires in the world. He bowed to no one except Allah. The diplomats panicked. This was a serious breach of protocol. But Mansa Musa was also incredibly wealthy, and the Mamluks didn't want to offend him or miss out on the economic benefits his visit would bring. A compromise was reached. Mansa Musa agreed to meet the Sultan, but he would not bow. He would not kiss the ground. He would greet al-Nasir Muhammad as an equal. This alone was extraordinary. It signaled to Cairo and to the Islamic world that Mali was not some peripheral kingdom. It was a major power. But the real shock came when Mansa Musa began distributing gold. He stayed in Cairo for 3 months, and during that time he gave gold to everyone. He donated gold to mosques and madrasas, Islamic schools. He gave gold to scholars, poets, and officials. He paid for the construction of new buildings. He purchased supplies for his caravan, goods, food, luxuries, and paid in gold. He gave so much gold that the market became flooded. Here's what happened. In medieval economies, gold was valuable because it was rare. The price of gold determined the value of currency, the cost of goods, the stability of trade. Egypt's economy ran on a gold standard. When Mansa Musa arrived and started handing out tons of gold, the supply skyrocketed. And when supply goes up, value goes down. Basic economics. Within weeks, the price of gold in Cairo plummeted. Some historians estimate it dropped by 20 to 25%. That might not sound like much, but in a pre-modern economy where gold was the foundation of currency, this was catastrophic. Merchants who had been trading in gold suddenly found their wealth devalued. People who had saved gold saw their savings become worth less overnight. The cost of goods inflated because merchants needed more gold to equal the same value. The Egyptian dinar, the currency, lost purchasing power. Mansa Musa had caused inflation, severe inflation, just by being generous. Arab historians who recorded the event were astonished. One chronicler, Al-Umari, wrote, "Gold was at a high price in Egypt until they came in that year. The mithqal did not go below 25 dirhams and was generally above. But from that time its value fell and it cheapened in price and has remained cheap till now." Till now. He was writing 12 years later. 12 years, and Egypt's economy still hadn't fully recovered. Realizing what he had done, Mansa Musa tried to fix it. On his return journey through Cairo, yes, he came back through Egypt after Mecca. He borrowed gold from Egyptian merchants at extremely high interest rates. He was trying to remove gold from circulation, to reduce the supply and stabilize the price. Think about that. He gave away so much gold that he had to borrow it back to fix the economy. Even that wasn't enough. It took over a decade for Cairo to stabilize. But Mansa Musa's visit did something else. It put Mali on the map, literally. European cartographers began drawing more detailed maps of Africa. The Catalan Atlas of 1375, one of the most important medieval maps, shows Mansa Musa sitting on a throne in West Africa, holding a golden scepter. The caption reads, "This Negro lord is called Musa Mali, Lord of the Negroes of Guinea. So abundant is the gold which is found in his country that he is the richest and most noble king in all the land." The world now knew. Africa wasn't poor. Africa was rich, and its greatest emperor had just proven it. But Mansa Musa's journey wasn't over. He still had to reach Mecca. From Cairo, Mansa Musa's caravan continued east, crossing the Sinai Peninsula into Arabia. This was the most sacred part of the journey. For Muslims, the Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, a religious obligation, a spiritual cleansing, a return to the origins of the faith. Mecca, in modern-day Saudi Arabia, is the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad. It is home to the Kaaba, the cubic black stone structure at the center of the Grand Mosque, which Muslims around the world face during prayer. Every year, hundreds of thousands of Muslims make the pilgrimage. In Mansa Musa's time, it was smaller, maybe 50,000 to 100,000 pilgrims annually. But it was still one of the greatest gatherings in the medieval world. When Mansa Musa arrived, he was just one pilgrim among many. Wealthy, yes, powerful, yes, but in the eyes of God, equal to every other believer. Islamic tradition requires all pilgrims to dress in simple white cloths, no jewelry, no finery, no symbols of rank. This is to symbolize equality before Allah. Rich or poor, king or beggar, all are the same. Mansa Musa participated in the rituals. He circled the Kaaba 7 times, as required. He traveled to the nearby mountains for prayers and reflection. He performed the rites that billions of Muslims have performed before and since. But even here, his wealth set him apart. He donated lavishly to the mosques of Mecca and Medina. He paid for the repair of religious sites. He gave gifts to scholars and religious leaders. And he made connections, political connections, religious connections. Mansa Musa met scholars from across the Islamic world, from Persia, India, North Africa, Spain. He invited some of them to return with him to Mali to teach at the universities of Timbuktu and Jannah. He wanted Mali to be not just wealthy but intellectually and spiritually advanced. He also met architects, and this would have profound consequences. One of the men who joined Mansa Musa's caravan was Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, a poet and architect from Granada, Spain. Al-Sahili was famous for his skills in Andalusian architecture, the beautiful geometric Islamic style of southern Spain. Mansa Musa hired him on the spot, paid him an enormous sum, 200 kilograms of gold according to one account, and brought him back to Mali. Al-Sahili would go on to design some of Mali's greatest buildings, including mosques in Timbuktu and Gao. His influence can still be seen in West African architecture today. Mansa Musa's pilgrimage wasn't just religious, it was diplomatic, economic, and cultural. He was positioning Mali as a major player in the Islamic world. He was importing knowledge, talent, and prestige. After completing the Hajj, Mansa Musa began the long journey home. But the return trip would be just as eventful as the journey there. The return journey took Mansa Musa back through Cairo, where, as mentioned earlier, he attempted to stabilize the gold market by borrowing back some of the gold he had given away. But there was a problem brewing back home. While Mansa Musa was away on pilgrimage, his empire had been attacked. The Mossi people, a rival kingdom to the south, had launched raids into Mali's territory. They had even attacked Timbuktu, one of Mali's greatest cities. When Mansa Musa learned of this, he was furious. He cut his stay in Cairo short and rushed home. His army mobilized, and the Mossi were driven back. But the incident revealed something important. Mali's power was tied directly to Mansa Musa's presence. He wasn't just a figurehead, he was the empire. When he returned to Mali in 1325, after more than a year away, he was greeted as a hero. He had completed the Hajj. He had brought back scholars, architects, and treasures from the Islamic world. He had elevated Mali's reputation to unprecedented heights, and he immediately set about transforming his empire. With the help of Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, he commissioned new mosques and palaces. He expanded the University of Sankore in Timbuktu, turning it into one of the great centers of learning in the Islamic world. Thousands of students came to study law, medicine, astronomy, and theology. He also reformed the administration of the empire, appointing educated officials, standardizing laws, and improving infrastructure. Under Mansa Musa, Mali reached its golden age, literally and figuratively. But here's the irony. For all his wealth, for all his power, Mansa Musa's greatest legacy wasn't the gold. It was the knowledge. The scholars he brought back, the libraries he built, the universities he funded. These became the foundation of West African intellectual life for centuries. Long after the gold ran out, the ideas remained. Mansa Musa ruled until his death in 1337. His empire would continue for another 2 centuries before internal conflicts and external invasions caused it to fragment. But the memory of his pilgrimage, that never faded. So why don't we learn about Mansa Musa in school? Why is his story not as famous as the kings of Europe or the emperors of China? The answer, as always, is colonialism. When Europeans began exploring and colonizing Africa in the 1500s and 1600s, they needed a justification. They needed a narrative that made Africans seem inferior, uncivilized, primitive, so that enslavement and exploitation could be morally justified. The idea of a wealthy, sophisticated, literate African empire didn't fit that narrative, so it was ignored, erased, dismissed as myth. European historians wrote Africa out of history. They claimed Africans had no writing, no architecture, no civilization. They attributed Africa's gold to everyone except Africans themselves, claiming Arab traders must have brought it, or that it was mined by lost Mediterranean civilizations. Even Timbuktu, once a city of scholars and libraries, became a punchline in European culture, a symbol of a remote, irrelevant place. From here to Timbuktu meant the middle of nowhere. But the manuscripts survived, hidden in private libraries preserved by families in Timbuktu. Hundreds of thousands of medieval African texts still exist. They prove that West Africa had a thriving intellectual culture. They document trade, law, science, and history, and they confirm what Arab historians recorded. Mansa Musa was real. His pilgrimage was real, and his wealth was beyond comprehension. Modern economists have tried to calculate his net worth, adjusted for inflation, for the relative value of gold, for the size and output of his empire. Estimates range from $400 billion to over $600 billion. To put that in perspective, Jeff Bezos' net worth at its peak was around $200 billion. Elon Musk's around $250 billion. Mansa Musa may have been twice as rich as the richest people alive today. But his wealth wasn't hoarded. It was spent on religion, on education, on infrastructure, on generosity. He gave so much away that he broke an economy. Today, statues of Mansa Musa stand in Mali. His face appears on currency. Scholars in Timbuktu still study the texts he helped preserve. And slowly, finally, the world is remembering. Not just a rich king, not just a generous pilgrim, but a symbol of what Africa was before colonization tried to erase it. An empire of gold, a civilization of knowledge, a ruler who proved that wealth, used wisely, can change the world. His name was Mansa Musa, the man who broke Egypt's economy with pure gold. And now, you know his story.